She said destruction would be loud when it came. That if your life ever really split in two, you would hear it happen. A slammed door, a shattered glass, a voice raised high enough to make the walls remember it. But that is not how it happened to me. It happened in a restaurant with low lighting and half-eaten pasta, in the soft clink of silverware, in the space between my boyfriend's fake sympathy and the look that followed it. My name is Brianna Carter. I'm 31 years old. And by the time I understood that the man I loved was already measuring what he could take from me, I had already handed it to him myself. His name was Mason Reed. He was 28, charming in the easy, polished way some men are when they've learned that confidence can pass for character if you wear it often enough. We had been together for 3 years. Not living together, his choice technically, though at the time he dressed it up as something thoughtful and mature. He liked to say he valued independence. I respected that. Or I told myself I did. He had his apartment, I had mine. We spent enough nights together that drawers and toothbrushes migrated back and forth, but there was always this invisible line between our lives that he insisted made us healthier, more balanced, more adult. I thought it meant he wasn't clingy. What I didn't realize then was that Mason loved independence most when it protected him from accountability. The Las Vegas trip was supposed to be our anniversary trip. 4 days. Nothing absurd. A nice hotel, a couple of shows, decent dinners, maybe one ridiculous tourist thing we would laugh about later. I had booked it months in advance and saved for it carefully, the way I save for everything. I'd put aside about $3,000 for the whole trip. Flights, hotel, food, entertainment. Enough to enjoy it without being reckless. I remember feeling proud of that. Proud in the quiet, boring way adults sometimes feel when they've built something responsible and ordinary with their own hands. Then, my mother fell and broke her hip 2 weeks before the trip. One phone call, and suddenly none of the plans mattered anymore. She needed surgery. She lived alone. There was no real question about what I was going to do. I flew out to help her. The night I told Mason, we were sitting across from each other in a little Italian place near my apartment. Candle on the table, soft music. The kind of setting that makes bad news feel almost disrespectful. "I'm so sorry," I said, setting my fork down because my appetite had disappeared halfway through the sentence. "But I can't go to Vegas. My mom's having surgery and I need to be there for her recovery." For a second, his face fell in a way that almost moved me. Almost. Then, something changed. It was tiny. Quick enough that I might have missed it if I had not been staring straight at him. Disappointment turned into calculation. And calculation turned into something warm and sympathetic, carefully arranged. "Oh no," he said softly. "Bree, that's awful. Is she going to be okay?" "Yeah, they think so. But she's going to need help after." "Of course," he nodded, twirling pasta around his fork. "Of course." Then came the pivot. "So," he dragged the word out lightly, like he was testing the air. "The hotel's already paid for, right?" I looked at him. "Yes." He gave me a small shrug. "Would it be crazy if I still went? I mean, not alone. I could take Brittany. The room's non-refundable anyway. It would be kind of a waste not to use it." There it was. No pause long enough to miss me. No real grief over the ruined trip. Just a neat little adjustment, as if the only thing that had changed was the seating arrangement. Something in me stirred then. Not a warning exactly. More like the brush of fabric against skin. A feeling too slight to name. I should have listened to it. Instead, I thought about my mother in a hospital bed. I thought about coordinating flights and medications and post-op care. I thought about all the practical things that come rushing in when fear doesn't have time to become panic. "I guess that makes sense," I said quietly. "The hotel is paid for." His whole body brightened. Not with relief. With excitement. "You're the best," he said, smiling so fast it almost embarrassed me that I hadn't expected it. "Seriously, we can just do our trip later." "We." Funny word. He reached for his glass, then added, casually, too casually. Maybe you could let me take one of your cards too, just in case, for emergencies. I looked up. He kept his eyes on his plate, as if the request were too harmless to need emphasis. Mason, I said, half laughing because I wanted it to sound ridiculous instead of concerning. You have your own money. Yeah, obviously, he smiled. I just mean if anything weird happens. Since the hotel's under your booking, and I'm basically stepping in last minute, I don't want to be stuck if something goes wrong. He said it smoothly. And that was part of his talent, making a selfish request sound like a practical inconvenience. Mason made decent money. Not extraordinary, but enough. Enough that a grown man didn't need his girlfriend's credit card for a trip he was now taking without her. That should have been the moment I said no. Instead, worry made me stupid. Or maybe not stupid. Just vulnerable in exactly the wrong direction. Only for emergencies, I said. Of course, he said immediately. And when he smiled at me then, warm and grateful and easy, I hated that part of myself that still wanted to believe him. By the time he left for Vegas, I was already at my mother's house. The surgery went well, but went well is such a dishonest phrase. It makes pain sound orderly. It makes recovery sound like a schedule you can stick to if you try hard enough. The truth was uglier. My mother was brave, but she was in agony. She hated needing help, hated the walker, hated asking me to hand her water, hated that standing up now required concentration and grit and someone nearby in case her balance betrayed her. I spent that first day at the hospital speaking to nurses, listening to discharge instructions, adjusting blankets, signing forms, repeating calm things I was not calm enough to feel. At some point, while she slept, I checked my phone and saw Mason's text. Boarding now. Don't worry about anything. Just focus on your mom. Love you. If I had only that text, I might still be able to lie to myself about who he was. That was the worst part. Cruel people are rarely cruel all the time. If they were, no one would stay. That night, after I got my mother settled back at home and finally sat down in the guest room with my shoes still on, I opened my banking app. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe instinct. Maybe anxiety. Maybe some part of me had already been counting the seconds until I had proof. The first charge had already gone through. Then another. Then another. My chest tightened. A restaurant charge. Over $300. A nightclub charge. A hotel spa. Retail purchases. I stared at the screen, refreshing it. Once. Twice. Like numbers could become less insulting if I looked at them long enough. By the end of the day, he had already burned through more than $1,200. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes your body reaches for the wrong response when the right one would hurt too quickly. I texted him. Hey, I saw some big charges on the card. Everything okay? No answer. Hours passed. My mother woke twice during the night in pain, and I helped her to the bathroom and back, one slow, aching step at a time. I heated soup she barely touched. I crushed pills into applesauce because she was too nauseous to swallow them easily. Around midnight, Mason finally responded. OMG, babe, Vegas is insanely expensive. Don't freak out, Brittany's paying me back for half of everything. I read the message 3 times. Not because it was convincing. Because it was so transparently insulting. He wasn't even pretending the charges were emergencies. He was just naming luxuries like I should understand. I called him. No answer. I texted again. Please be careful. That card was for emergencies. This time the reply came faster. Not words. A photo. Mason in sunglasses at some glittering pool party, shirt half open, drink in hand, sunlight all over his face, like he had not a single real problem in the world. Brittany leaned into the edge of the frame, laughing. He had added a caption across the bottom. Having the time of my life without you. I felt something cold move through me then. Not heartbreak. That came later. This was cleaner than heartbreak. Sharper. I looked from the photo to the room around me. The dim lamp, the folded blanket on the chair, the paper cup of hospital ice water I had forgotten to throw away. Down the hall, my mother shifted in bed and let out the small, involuntary sound people make when pain wakes them before they're ready. And there he was, using my card for bottle service and boutique shopping, while I stood in a pharmacy aisle comparing stool softeners and post-surgical protein drinks. I opened the app again. More charges were pending now. Designer sunglasses. A boutique purchase. Another restaurant. The card in my hand suddenly no longer felt like trust. It felt like evidence. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the truth assemble itself without mercy. He had not adapted to the changed trip. He had benefited from it. My emergency had become his opportunity. And the worst part, the part that made my face burn even though I was alone, was knowing he believed I would be too distracted, too kind, too guilty, too overwhelmed to stop him. Maybe up until that photo, he had been right. I stared at his smiling face one last time, then reached for my phone and called the credit card company. When the representative answered, I kept my voice calm. I need to report my card stolen. It took less than 5 minutes. That was all it took to end the part of our relationship where he still believed my silence meant permission. The woman on the line was efficient, almost comforting in how routine my problem sounded to her. "I'm so sorry to hear that," she said. "When did you notice the card was missing?" "This morning," I replied, staring at Mason's poolside smile still glowing faintly on my screen. "I'm out of town for a family emergency and just realized it's gone." "Not a problem. We'll cancel it immediately and issue a replacement. Any charges from this point forward will be reversed." "Thank you." Simple. Clean. Final. Was it technically true? Number. Did I care? Not even a little. Because the truth, the real truth, was that something had already been stolen from me long before I made that call. Trust. Respect. The quiet assumption that the person I loved would not take advantage of me when I was at my most vulnerable. And once that was gone, the plastic card in his wallet didn't belong to him anymore. The fallout didn't take long. 18 hours, give or take. I was helping my mom through a slow, painful set of physical therapy exercises when my phone started vibrating like it was trying to escape the table. One call, then another. Then another. By the time I helped her sit back down and reached for it, there were 23 missed calls, 42 messages, all from Mason, and a few from Brittany. I opened them. The first ones were confusion. "Hey, card isn't working. Did something happen?" Then irritation. "Brianna, this isn't funny. I'm at a restaurant. They think I'm trying to skip out on the bill." Then panic. "Call me right now." This is embarrassing. Brittany had to cover it, and she's pissed. Then anger. "Your card got declined at the club. Security is giving me attitude. I know you're seeing this." I read every single message slowly. Not because I needed the information, because I needed to feel the shift. This was what it sounded like when control slipped out of his hands. I typed exactly 2 words. "Same here." Then I muted the conversation, set my phone face down, and went back to helping my mother lift her leg an inch higher than it had gone the hour before. The calls didn't stop. They just changed voices. Brittany started calling next. I let it ring. Voicemail after voicemail stacked up, each one louder than the last. The one I eventually listened to made me actually smile. "You are seriously unbelievable," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut through the speaker. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've completely ruined this trip. Mason is freaking out, and honestly, this is financial abuse. You can't just cut someone off like that in another city." Financial abuse. The phrase echoed in my head for a moment. I looked down at my hands, still smelling faintly of antiseptic from the hospital. still shaking a little from exhaustion. I had spent the day helping my mother relearn how to stand. He had spent the day ordering bottle service. And somehow I was the one abusing him. I didn't call her back. I didn't call him back. For the first time in 3 years, I chose silence, and it didn't feel like weakness. It felt like clarity. By the third day, the tone had shifted again. The panic was gone. Now there was accusation. You reported the card stolen. Are you insane? I stared at the message. So he'd figured it out. Good. Another one came seconds later. I have expenses here, Brianna. The hotel expects tips. How am I supposed to eat? This is so controlling and honestly abusive. I'm stuck here with no money. I actually laughed out loud that time. My mom looked up from her chair. What is it? Nothing, I said quickly, softening my voice. Just someone being ridiculous. Because that was the thing. Nothing he was saying matched reality. He had his own credit cards. His own debit card. A full-time job. He wasn't stranded. He was inconvenienced. There's a difference, and he was counting on me not to notice it. Or worse, to care more about his discomfort than my own boundaries. Then came the email. Oh, the email. It arrived late that night, long enough that, for a moment, I thought maybe he had run out of things to say. I was wrong. It was over 2,000 words. I didn't read it all at once. I couldn't. I had to take it in pieces, like something bitter you swallow slowly so it doesn't choke you. He accused me of abandoning him in a strange city. Las Vegas. A place that survives, quite comfortably, on millions of tourists who somehow manage not to collapse without their girlfriend's credit card. He called me controlling. Manipulative. Said I had embarrassed him in front of his friends. Said I was jeopardizing our entire relationship over a misunderstanding. And then, this was the part that made something inside me go very, very quiet. He listed everything he had planned to do with my money. Matching designer bags for him and Brittany. A helicopter tour over the Grand Canyon. VIP. Tickets to some DJ set. Investment pieces from high-end stores. He wrote it like I should feel guilty. Like I had robbed him of an experience he deserved. Like I had taken something from him. I sat there for a long time after I finished reading. Not angry. Not even hurt. Just clear. So clear it almost felt like stepping outside of my own life and looking at it from a distance. I forwarded the email to my best friend. Added one line. Notice how he never once asks how my mom is doing. He came back a day early. I found out because my phone lit up again that morning while I was making my mom breakfast. I'm back. We need to talk. I'll come by your place at 7. Not, can we talk? Not, are you okay? A statement. A plan. A decision made without me. I wiped my hands on a towel and typed back. I'm still with my mom. She needs me here. The response came instantly. Are you serious right now? We have a relationship emergency and you're prioritizing your mother? I read that message twice. Then a third time. Each time, the words rearranged themselves into something simpler. Not confusion. Not stress. Truth. This is who he is. I exhaled slowly. Yes, I'm prioritizing my mother who just had major surgery over your Vegas trip. Don't go to my place. You're not welcome there anymore. There was a pause. A longer one this time. Then, not welcome. Brianna, you stole from me. I blinked. Explain how I stole from you by canceling my own credit card. I had plans with that money. I stared at that sentence until it almost blurred. Your plans, your wants, my money. Do you hear yourself? Couples share things. That's what adults do. Adults ask before taking. Adults don't spend over $1,000 in one day on someone else's card. It's Vegas. Everything's expensive. You knew that when you said I could go. I said you could use the room, not my bank account. Bottle service isn't an emergency. There it was. The line.
Clear. Uncrossable.
He sent one more message. You're being financially abusive. I didn't even feel anything when I read it. No anger. No need to defend myself. Just a quiet, steady certainty. We're done, Mason. Mail me my spare key. I thought that would be the end of it. I underestimated him. Of course I did. Because the next call didn't come to my phone. It came to my mother's. The house phone rang while I was in the kitchen, and before I could get to it, she had already picked it up. Hello? I froze. Then I heard his voice. Faint, but unmistakable. Soft at first. Careful.
Performing.
Hi, Miss Carter. It's Mason. I need to talk to you about Brianna. She's been really unreasonable, and I think you should know. I moved toward her, ready to take the phone. But my mother held up her hand, stopping me. She listened. Really listened. Long enough for him to dig his own grave with his own words. Then she spoke. Her voice was calm, tired, but sharp in a way I had never heard before. Sweetheart, she said gently, any man who takes advantage of a woman while she's caring for her injured mother is no man at all.
Silence.
Then, please don't call here again. Click. She hung up, set the phone down, and looked at me like nothing extraordinary had just happened. Can you make me some tea? She asked. I stared at her for a second. Then I smiled. Yeah, I said softly. I can do that. And for the first time since Vegas, I felt something settle into place inside me. Not anger. Not grief. Something steadier. Like a door closing quietly behind me. The breakup should have been the end of it. Clean, final. A line drawn with enough clarity that neither of us could pretend we didn't see it. But people like Mason don't walk away when they lose access. They circle. They test. They look for any crack you might have left open without realizing it. And for a while, he tried everything. The first attempt came 3 days later. A message. No anger this time. No accusations. Just a photo. An electric bill. Another message followed. I hope you're happy. I can't even pay this now. Then a car payment notice. Then rent. Each one sent separately, like small emotional weights dropped into my lap, one at a time. I spent everything in Vegas because I thought you had me. I read that sentence twice. Not because it was complicated, because it was so simple. So honest in a way he didn't even intend. He thought I had him, not supported him, not loved him, funded him. There's a difference. I didn't reply. Instead, I did something I hadn't done before. I sat down with a calculator. Mason made around $65,000 a year. His rent was $1,200 a month. Even factoring in whatever he had spent in Vegas, there was no world where 3 days of bad decisions wiped him out completely. Unless he had already been living on the assumption that someone else would always cover the gap. That someone had been me. The realization didn't hurt as much as I expected. It clarified things, made everything that came next easier to see. When guilt didn't work, he shifted. The messages softened, slowed, became careful again. I've been having panic attacks. I can't sleep. I keep thinking about what you did. You've really messed up my relationship with money, Brianna. I feel anxious every time I check my account now. He even sent me links, articles about financial stress, about anxiety, about emotional trauma tied to instability. I stared at my phone for a long time after that, because for a second, a very small, dangerous second, I almost responded, almost said something kind. Almost stepped back into the role he had quietly assigned me over the years. The fixer. The one who absorbs discomfort so no one else has to. But then I thought about my mother, gripping the edge of her bed as she forced herself to stand. About the way her voice shook when she asked for help because she hated needing it, and how even in pain, she never once demanded more than what was reasonable. Mason wasn't struggling. He was reframing, trying to turn consequence into cruelty. I put my phone down, didn't answer. The threats came next. They always do when softer tactics fail. My lawyer says what you did is fraud. I actually laughed when I read that, not quietly, out loud. My mom looked over from the couch. Still him? Yeah, I said. He's escalating. What does that mean? It means he's out of reasonable arguments. I picked up my phone and typed my first real response since the breakup. Have your lawyer contact mine. Then, after a brief pause, I added my friend Jason's information. Jason was an actual lawyer, and more importantly, he was the kind of person who found situations like this deeply entertaining. I could already imagine his reaction. He never heard from Mason. Neither did I. For a few days, there was silence. Real silence this time. No missed calls. No passive-aggressive messages. No emotional bait. I should have known it wouldn't last, because Mason had one more move left, the one he thought would corner me. He showed up at my work. First day back after 2 weeks of family leave. I had barely settled into my desk when reception called. Brianna, there's someone here to see you, the receptionist said, carefully. He says it's urgent. My stomach dropped. I already knew. Mason? A pause. Yes? Of course. Of course he would choose my workplace, a public space, an environment where I would feel pressured to stay polite, to keep things contained, to avoid causing a scene. I walked to the lobby slowly, already feeling that familiar tension building in my chest. And there he was, standing near the front desk like he belonged there, dressed perfectly. Clean lines, sharp jacket, the version of himself he presented to the world when he needed to be taken seriously. In his hands, a box. When he saw me, his expression softened instantly. Calculated. We need to talk, he said, loud enough for the receptionist, and anyone else within earshot, to hear. I didn't lower my voice. This is my workplace, Mason. You need to leave. He ignored that completely. I brought your things, he said, lifting the box slightly. And you have some of mine I need back. I stepped closer, glancing into the box. A few old t-shirts, a charger, random items that barely added up to anything. This wasn't about belongings. It was about control. About forcing an interaction I had already ended. Fine, I said. What do you want back? His jaw tightened slightly. Then, the Roomba I got you for Christmas. I blinked. You mean the Roomba you bought with the gift card my mom gave you? To buy me a gift? His face flushed. And the air fryer. That was a housewarming gift. Gifts can be returned if... No, I cut in, sharper now. They can't. A few people had started watching. I could feel it. The quiet attention. The tension. He noticed it too, which meant it was time for his next tactic. Emotion. His expression shifted, softened, cracked. He said, voice lowering. I thought we had something real, Brianna. How can you throw it all away over one mistake? There it was. Minimization. Reframing. One mistake. I looked at him for a long moment, then I said it clearly. You took my credit card on a trip I wasn't even on and tried to spend thousands of dollars without asking me. That's not a mistake. I was going to pay you back. When? A pause. How? Another pause. Silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable. Because there was no answer. There had never been an answer. The softness in his face vanished, just like that, like someone flipping a switch. You're going to regret this, he said quietly. I didn't react. I know things about you. I almost smiled. Like what? He hesitated, searching, reaching. Like how you still sleep with that stupid bear your grandma made you. I stared at him. Then, slowly, I nodded. That's what you've got? His expression flickered. For the first time, uncertainty slipped through. I didn't raise my voice, didn't argue, didn't defend myself. I just turned slightly and met the eyes of the security guard who had been watching from a distance. He stepped forward immediately. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Mason looked at me one last time. Anger, embarrassment, something almost desperate underneath it all. This isn't over, he snapped as the guard took his arm. You still owe me. No, I didn't. And for the first time since all of this started, I didn't feel the need to explain why. I just watched as they escorted him out. Watched as the version of him I had spent 3 years believing in walked out of my life, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. And when the door closed behind him, I didn't feel relief. Not exactly. I felt finished. Like the story had finally caught up to the truth. 3 months later, the silence finally stuck. Not the fragile kind, the one that waits to be broken. The real kind. The kind that settles in your life like furniture you didn't realize you needed until it was there. Mason tried, of course. Not all at once, not dramatically, just persistently. Like someone tapping on a door long after it's been locked, hoping eventually you'll forget why you closed it in the first place. The invoice came first. I almost didn't open the email. His name in my inbox didn't trigger anger anymore, just a dull, familiar irritation. Like a song you used to hate that still finds you somehow. But curiosity won. Inside was a spreadsheet. Clean, organized, meticulous in a way that almost impressed me, if it hadn't been so absurd. At the top, in bold, balance owed, $3,847. I stared at the number for a second. Then I started scrolling, line after line. Gas money for driving to my apartment. Dinner bills from dates he had invited me to, birthday gifts, coffee runs, and then emotional labor, estimated value. I leaned back in my chair and laughed. Really laughed. The kind that catches you off guard because it doesn't feel like it belongs to the situation. He had quantified our relationship, reduced it to transactions, turned shared experiences into debts. And somehow, in his mind, I was the one who owed him. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I printed it out, framed it, and hung it in my home office. Not out of spite, out of memory. Because I never wanted to forget how easily I had once mistaken entitlement for affection. The next wave came through mutual friends, subtle at first. A message here, a question there. Hey, is everything okay between you and Mason? I heard things ended kind of badly. He's been having a really hard time. Translation, he's telling a story, and he's hoping it sticks. Some of them approached carefully, others less so. One even tried guilt. He says you left him in a really bad financial situation. That's kind of harsh, Brianna. I remember sitting there, phone in hand, reading that message, and for a moment, I considered explaining, breaking it down step by step, proving my side. Then I stopped, because I realized something important. People who already believed him weren't missing information. They were choosing a version of the story that made more sense to them, and people who actually knew me, they didn't need convincing. So I sent back one message. If you think I owe someone money for spending my credit card without permission, I'm not sure we're on the same page about what's reasonable. Some friendships went quiet after that. A few disappeared completely. It stung, but not as much as I thought it would. Because losing people who only understand you when it's convenient isn't really a loss. About a month after everything ended, Brittany reached out. That I almost expected. Her message was short, direct. Hey, so Mason never paid me back for Vegas. It was about $2,000. Since it was your card that got declined, I think it's fair you cover it. I stared at my phone for a long time. Not because I was unsure, because I was trying to decide how honest I wanted to be. Finally, I called her. She answered on the second ring. Hey, she said quickly. So you saw my message? I did. A pause. Then, cautiously. And? I leaned back in my chair. Let me make sure I understand this, I said calmly. You went to Vegas with my boyfriend, watched him spend my money, benefited from it, and now that he didn't pay you back, you want me to? Silence. Then, well, when you put it like that, that's exactly how it is. Her tone sharpened. He said you told him to use the card. I said it was for emergencies. Well, things got expensive. Bottle service isn't an emergency. Another pause. Longer this time. He said you were okay with it. I almost smiled. Of course he did. She exhaled sharply. Look, I'm just trying to get my money back. Then I suggest you ask the person who actually owes you. He says he's broke. Then I guess you just learned something expensive about who you trust. She let out a frustrated sound, half sigh, half something harsher. Then the line went dead. Fair enough. Mason's last attempt came 2 weeks ago. No message, no explanation, just a Venmo request. $50. I stared at it, confused for a second. Then I saw the note. For the emotional labor of teaching you how to be in a relationship. I actually shook my head, not in anger, in disbelief. Even now, even after everything, he still believed that narrative. That he had given something valuable. That I had taken something from him. That somehow, in the end, he was still the one owed. I declined the request, added a note of my own. For the financial education of teaching you that credit cards have owners. He blocked me after that, finally. Looking back now, the red flags weren't subtle. I just didn't call them what they were. The way he always forgot his wallet. The way he ordered the most expensive thing on the menu when I was paying, like it was a joke we were both in on. The designer bag he once bought himself using my Amazon account, and then handed it to me with a grin and said, "Happy birthday." I had laughed, because it felt easier than asking what that meant. What it always meant. My mom is doing great now, fully recovered, walking without assistance. She likes to tell the story sometimes, usually at dinner, usually when someone new is around, about the phone call. About how she told off my ex while she was still half-drugged and barely able to sit up straight. She sounded so calm, I told her once. She smiled. "Oh, honey," she said. "That wasn't calm. That was clarity." I think about that a lot. Clarity. How it doesn't always arrive when you want it, but when it does, it changes everything. As for me, I'm good. Really. Dating isn't something I'm rushing back into. Not because I'm afraid, because I'm selective now. Careful in a way that doesn't come from insecurity, but from understanding. Separate finances, clear boundaries, conversations that happen before trust is tested, not after it's broken. And if anyone ever looks at me and says they need my credit card for emergencies on a trip I'm not even going on, that won't be a red flag anymore. That will be the end of the conversation. Oh. And I did buy a new vacuum. A better one, actually. Paid for it myself, with a card that no one else will ever have access to.